I would say that the majority of national conversation about what the Houston Texans did in the draft has centered on the Texans trading back up with the Arizona Cardinals for pick number 3, swapping pick 12 with Arizona for that third pick, sending the second round pick that they had, pick number 33, and then on top of that, sending next year's first round pick along with the third round pick in exchange for it. And most people think that that move was crazy. Let's start with the Athletics' Sheil Capettia, who posted a video from, I believe, the Ringer. Wait, is he on the Ringer now or is he on the Athletic? Whatever he works for now. Here's what Sheil Capettia had to say about what he calls reckless trade the Texans made.
Why was this such a reckless trade? Why am I going in on this so hard? You don't take a swing that big on a non-quarterback. How many non-quarterbacks currently playing in the NFL who we already know are great players would be worth that kind of compensation? Probably not a lot. This roster still stinks. Go look at their depth chart. The reason I really think why I use the word reckless is because I think the Texans ignored the most likely reality. The most likely reality is that they are going to be picking in the top 5 next season in a draft, I'll mention it again, with QB star power. That is a beautiful spot to be, because if you want to take the QB, you can take the QB, but guess what? If you don't want to take the QB, teams are going to be calling you left and right, trying to get up there for one of the quarterbacks. So the most likely scenario is that 2024 first-round pick is going to be worth a lot, and they gave it up because they fell in love.
Yeah, most of that's true. I don't buy the idea, though, that they're going to be trading, that they will be drafting top 5. Maybe I should. It's semantics. I think that pick's probably going to be pick 7 through 13 or something like that. But did we not think to ourselves that last year's team would be remotely competitive? I think we all thought that they were going to be not pulseless. I think we thought they were like a 6 to 7 win team.
The over-under was 4.5, and we all were like, yeah, they can get 5 wins.
We hammered the over.
Yeah.
So this year, the over-under, Sean, is 5.5. I mean, I don't want to sound like a crazy Bobo with battle red glasses on, but I feel like they can do more than that.
I mean, to me, it's just as simple as, like, do we think D'Amico Ryans is a good coach, and do we think that the roster got better from last year?
I do think the roster got better, and I'm looking up and down the roster. At wide receiver, you did bring in Robert Woods. You did bring in Noah Brown. You brought in Dalton Schultz at tight end. Okay, your skill players are better. John Mechie III is going to be back. You also have in the defensive line department, in addition to having Jerry Hughes, who you already had, you brought in Sheldon Rankins. Will Anderson is aboard now. On the interior offensive line, you brought in Shaq Mason via trade. I think there are some things to look at and say, okay, wait, this guy's still on the team. I'd specifically point to, I think Christian Kirksey's still on the team. That guy's not good at linebacker, and you're hoping that you almost never see him on the field this coming season. But Hassan Rizwe is somebody else that they brought in. I look up and down the roster, and I recognize enough names to the point where I'm like, this isn't the worst roster in the NFL. And it's Jimmy Ward, who they brought in as well. So, again, we're having an argument about, like, who's got the biggest small little weenie. But at the same time, I don't believe that pick is going to be top 5 the way that Shield does. But I can understand the argument for it being a reckless trade. Anderson has to be really good.
Yeah, it's not. I feel like we're just making the same argument of like, oh, they're not going to be a 3 or 4 win team. They're going to be a 5 or 6 win team. Like that's what it is. It's like they're going to win 6 games. Like they're going to be frisky.
Mina Kimes also had a similar thought from ESPN, Sean, tweeting if Will Anderson is incredible, no one will care in 3 years. But let's say the Texans struggle this year anyway. How good would Anderson have to be worth picks 12, 33, and a top 10 pick next year? As I said on NFL Live, viewing it through the lens of, well, they would have spent X on CJ Stroud, ignores the actual alternate path. Drafting Stroud at 2, taking another player at 12, and holding on to the draft capital, that is the alternative universe that we could be in with this Texans team. And that is a fair point. Could they have still found somebody at 12 and then have the first round pick next year? Also had that early second round pick this year. It is a fair argument. Anderson has to be really, really good. I don't know that it's a disaster making that trade, but I can see it unfolding that way. I can. And again, going back to a conversation we had yesterday, Sean, I just don't want to dive back into who did the Texans actually trade for? Did they trade for CJ Stroud or did they trade for Will Anderson? Oh, were you about to take it there?
I was about to say, wait, does Will Anderson have to be that good or does CJ Stroud have to be that good?
You will be able to
honestly
spin it that way if you want.
If either of them are really good, that's who the Texans should just say the trade was really for. We really traded all that stuff for whichever one's better. Mm-hmm. We really loved whichever one's worse at number whatever.
Yeah.
You can just play it off. That's, Caserio. Levels ahead.
4D chess.
Yeah, he's giving himself the option of trade was actually for CJ Stroud.
What are we on? 3 4D chess references thus far today? Dusty Baker.
There's a lot of chess going on.
And Nick Caserio. Can the Texans win now? Ryan Clark of ESPN believes that's why they made the moves that they did.
Didn't this move feel like the Houston Texans are trying to win now? You look at a team that fought extremely hard last season under Lovie Smith. You go out, you get DeMeco Ryans, and you make the type of commitment to him as a coach with a 6-year deal that says we're trying to build and we're trying to build with you. And it seems like they let DeMeco Ryans have a ton of input into this. DeMeco Ryans knows what it is to fall short of a championship when you have everything else because you don't have that sort of dude at quarterback. You go out and get CJ Stroud, who can make every single throw in the route tree. And they were high on Will Anderson. They thought that he was the best overall player in the draft. And when you feel that way about a dude, guess what? You move back up and you go get him. They aren't waiting for next year. They aren't waiting for 3 years from now. They're trying to build a foundation under their new head coach.
Can they win now? That's the big question. I honestly do not know as far as being a legitimate contender, but factor in that they are going to be playing in the AFC South. That's at least 6 winnable games. 4 where I think you would be favored. I think you'd be favored against Tennessee and Indianapolis in both games. Given where Indianapolis is with their quarterback situation.
Yeah.
Given where Tennessee seems to be.
You'd hope just to go 4-2 in those 6 games. That's either you get swept by Jacksonville, you take care of business against the rest, or you steal one against Jacksonville, you drop another one. Because again, this team isn't awesome where we're nope, they're gonna sweep 2 of their division rivals. It's most of those games are or most of those, most seasons that ends up being 1-1.
Yeah,
so
100%.
If you can just sweep one of them, and I don't know, but I do think that again, when we're talking about ready to win, we're not saying win the Super Bowl. It's ready to not give up the first overall pick, which, by the way, the last 3 years they've been terrible. They haven't had the number 1 overall pick.
That is true as well. Other teams are going to be playing this coming season, in addition to the AFC South teams. Cardinals, they might be the worst roster in the NFL.
They might have the number 1 pick from their own pick.
Right. Seriously. You have, on top of that, the Buccaneers, who are likely going into next year with either Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask under center, and it's sounding like Baker Mayfield, it's his job to lose. You play the Falcons. They are bad.
Desmond Ridder, yeah.
I mean, they have a lot of weapons now around Desmond Ridder. That is fair. And you could also argue that the Panthers played well last season in spite of their quarterback play. Bryce Young, he comes in, so they should be better. by default. But I mean, 7 wins is
Raiders.
possible. I don't think it's a lock that this is a top 5 pick next year. Where a lot of people on the outside are looking in, I think believe it will be a top 5 pick.
Also, this is
that they
something
gave up for Anderson.
this is something that you hear more about like in the NBA with like when you come down the stretch of the season, like how many teams are actually like putting their best foot forward to actually win these games. What's the motivation for some of these teams? You see it with like the Portland Trailblazers where they absolutely pack it up after the All-Star game the last 2 years.
Yeah.
The Texans will not have any incentive to pack it in late in the season to try to get Caleb Williams. All those teams that we just mentioned will have incentive to pack it in if things aren't going well. So there's going to be a race to the bottom that the Texans will not be participating in. And so just that advantage alone is going to make
That's
it
true.
very, very hard for them to get the number 1.
You could have a great December. If you play some of those teams in December, like that's what you should be hoping for if you want them to win more games. You want to play Arizona in December. You want to play Carolina in December where Bryce Young maybe is hurt by that point of the year because he's a small fellow. He's a baby. He's a baby. He's small.